Part 30. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 312. Zoro suddenly asks Sanji with a serious face, "Curly your eyebrows, where are Nami and the others?" Sanji looked at Zoro and said, "Green algae head, you are still safe and sound. Nami is observing from a distance. Vivi is over there to help treat the wounded." Rog heaved a sigh of relief after hearing this, and said, "It's so dangerous here, as long as everyone is okay." Under the leadership of Sanji, Rog and the others hurriedly joined Vivi and the others. Rog and Usopp went to Vivi's side. "I saw the surviving officers and soldiers of the Royal Army on the desert providing emergency treatment to the wounded. Wei is treating the wounded in one of them." Wei, Chopper and Luffy shouted first. Wei heard a familiar voice, and quickly stood up and looked over there. A rare smile appeared on Vivi's face. "Rog, Luffy, Usopp, Chopper, Zoro. Are you all okay?" Vivi said happily. "Wei, I miss you so much." Chopper took the lead in rushing towards Wei. Everyone wept with joy for a moment. It is the happiest thing to meet good friends again. Wei then looked at Ace, the spring goddess and the king of ninjas. "You have a new friend?" Wei asked. Roger quickly said, "These are friends we met on the road." Wei looked at them and said, "It's nice to meet you. But this battle is very cruel. In this case, you don't have to worry, I will join this battle," Ace said. "I want to help everyone," said the goddess of spring water. "I want to punish Crocodile. He and his subordinates don't have the slightest principle," said the Ninja King. At this time, Wei felt infinite warmth. It seems that countless people are trying to help her. At this moment, a voice sounded. "Everyone is here." The voice was so sweet and familiar. Everyone saw Nami running over on a horse. After Nami arrived here, she quickly dismounted and joined everyone. "Nami, you miss me so much." Chopper pounces on Nami. Luffy and Usopp were also cheering. "Everyone is here now. Now everyone is here. Together we can fight against the enemy," Rog said. "Wait a minute. In fact, it's not just you who have more helpers. We also have more helpers here. Although it's a bit unexpected," Sanji said suddenly. At this moment, a trail of white smoke suddenly descended from the sky. Everyone was shocked. Rog, Usopp and Luffy saw the smoke quickly return to human form. He was a burly and tall man, and his sturdy chest and abdomen muscles were as textured as steel. That short white hair. There were still 2 cigars in his mouth. Her prey-catching eyes quickly fixed on everyone present. "What?" Usopp said in shock. "It's him." Luffy also recognized the other person. "It's Smoky Hunter, Smoker," Rog said in surprise. Smoker looked at everyone and said, "Long time no see." Saran looked at the other person and said in surprise, "Why is he here? He couldn't have been chasing him all the way here, right?" "You're right, Chlorophyta," Sanji said. "Actually, there is a reason for this," Nami quickly explained to Rog and the others. Smoker looked at Rogue, Zoro, Usopp, Luffy and Chopper. He didn't know that reindeer. There were a few unfamiliar faces, but except for the fact that Ace had a unique aura that made Smoker feel unusual, he didn't care about them. Smoker looked at Rog and said, "The boy who can manipulate plants." He looked at Luffy again and said, "Rubber boy." He said to Saran again, "The swordsman Dashiki never forgets." Then he looked at Usopp again, and said, "Nobody." Smoker finally said, "Don't worry, I won't arrest you now." But the expressions of the 4 were very surprised, and of course the expressions of Saran and Usopp were about to explode. Usopp wailed, "Nobody. This king of lies is about to burst into tears and snot." Chopper quickly helped him. Zoro's face was very ugly, and he asked Smog, "Dasichi, can't forget." Smoker said to him again, "Yes, Dashiki has been saying that he wants to find you, the pirate swordsman, and take back the treasured sword in your hand. And he also came here with me. Zoro's face became extremely ugly. He whispered, that woman. Sauron now keeps showing Dashiki's appearance in his mind. If Dashiki suddenly appeared in front of him, he could dig a hole and jump in. Roger hurriedly stepped forward and asked Smoker, you just said that we will not be arrested? Smoker and Rog looked at each other and said, yes. I made an agreement with this curly eyebrow. I will not take action against you until I defeat Crocodile. Rog looked at Sanji, and Sanji said helplessly, it's hard to say. But anyway, he won't attack us before defeating Crocodile. Next came a tall woman in the uniform of an admiral. It was none other than Colonel Hina. Hina looked at Rog and the others, and then asked Smoker, they are the pirates you want to chase? Smoker glanced at her and said, yes. Hina looked at Rog and Usopp, and said with some surprise, it's actually some brats, and these people can actually make you so hard. It can be seen that their strength is really not bad. Sanji quickly said with love on his face, it's really worthy of being Colonel Hina. His vision is accurate. Rog looked at Smoker and said, this way. Then we are not opponents for the time being. This way, we can deal with Crocodile with confidence. It's good to know. I just declare first. I also want to deal with Crocodile, because his actions have trampled on justice. As a captain of the Navy, I need to solve him. But this does not mean that I will cooperate with you. I will deal with him according to your plan, Smoker said solemnly again. After Smoker finished what he needed to say, he walked away a few steps and looked at the huge desert storm. Hina looked at Smoker and said, you really stick to your principles. Smoker said, a pirate will always be a pirate. Crocodile is, and so are these boys. Smoker hated pirates from the bottom of his heart. He looked down upon the Shishibukai and all kinds of idealistic pirates. In his opinion, pirates, representatives of evil, are not so tall. Rog and others also looked at this huge desert storm. Now everyone has one goal, which is to defeat Crocodile. The huge desert storm continued north in a straight line. However, this cloudy tower-like thing suddenly surged sideways for a while. Everyone felt strange that something was moving. Smoker's eyes became serious. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 313. On the side of the huge desert storm, something gushed out. The last thing that was not small rushed out. This thing fell hard to the west of the giant desert storm. When this thing stood up again, Smoker and others were shocked. Except for Rog and the others who didn't know the situation. The Sphinx hasn't been wiped out yet. The Sphinx stood up again, Sphinx vulture wings. This huge monster seems to be unkillable. Even if he was involved in this huge desert storm, he was able to escape successfully in the end. It's the most alive thing I've ever seen, Smoker said. It's not that big anymore, Sanji said. Looking at it now, I can see that the body of the Sphinx is only the size of a 5-story building. At the beginning, it was a full 10-story building. And you can't just look at the height. Every time the Sphinx becomes shorter, the entire body shrinks in the same proportion. The current height is only about the same as before, but the volume is only 1/7 or 1/8. It's like the gap between a cub and a male lion. Although it is still much larger than a human, it is already a monster whose strength has been greatly reduced. Roger sees the Sphinx, a monster made of sand. But the Sphinx vulture wings are all lifelike. I'm afraid it and this huge desert storm are both Crocodile's masterpieces, Rog asked. Exactly, Sanji said. Usopp was relieved from the shock of being named an unknown person by Smoker just now, and when he saw this monster Sphinx formed of sand, he immediately became energetic. Oh my god, what kind of monster is this? Usopp said in surprise. Have you not seen Captain Usopp? Chopper asked. Usopp also no longer pretended so much, and said very frankly, "This is the first time I saw it too." Chopper nodded, continued to look at the Sphinx, and said, "This is really a rare monster in the world." The Sphinx roared at the crowd. "Ow! The size of this monster has been greatly reduced, but it still continues to execute Crocodile's order to destroy the enemy." The Sphinx came again. Wei suddenly looked at the wounded and said, "It's too bad. Now the wounded are piled up around here, and they can fight here, and these wounded will undoubtedly die." Jiaka quickly shook hands with the scabbard at his waist and rushed forward. "He has to be blocked." Gekko was ready to fight again. Although Rog and other people who came later were not very clear, they also judged the problem from the situation at the scene. "Oh, now that we're here, let's deal with this monster," Rog said. Zoro held the samurai sword scabbard at his waist with his hand, and said, "I can't ask for it." The Ninja King also touched the ninja sword sheath on his back. "Don't miss me," the Ninja King said. How could Sauron fight without him? The goddess of spring also puts 3 axes, the golden axe, the silver axe and the iron axe, on her left arm, ready to be used at any time. "I will give everyone strong magical support," the spring water goddess said. Luffy waved his fist and said, "Okay, I can finally hit the enemy in the air." Ace threw off the cloak he was wearing, revealing his strong body, and said, "I also want to practice my hands." Everyone is going to attack. This Sphinx, which has been severely shrunk, is just showing off its strength at the end. Zoro and the King of Ninjas took the lead. The two rushed over quickly. Zoro drew out all 3 katana swords, and Shui Zhao bit them in his mouth. Hideo Yazuan and Gaidaru are in his hands. The 3 swordsmen galloped quickly and approached the Sphinx. 3 sword style. 6-point cut. Sauron made 3 slashes horizontally and 2 slashes diagonally. In total, the goal is divided into 6 points with 3 knives as crosses. The 3 knives were so powerful that they directly hit the Sphinx's body. Puff. Although the Sphinx's body was not completely broken, it was knocked to the ground heavily. That's not all, the King of Ninja moved swiftly and ghostly on top of the fallen Sphinx. Slash with the ninja sword. Although this knife is just a blow, it is powerful enough to kill cattle and horses. Sphinx was stabbed severely. The Sphinx stood up angrily. He swings his huge claws to attack the Ninja King. The Ninja King quickly took out 3 explosive shurikens from his waist pack and threw them out. 3 exploding shurikens hit the Sphinx's body. Boom 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 boom. 3 exploding shurikens produced 3 explosions. These 3 explosions blasted a lot of sand out of Sphinx's body. Ow! The Sphinx fought back angrily, but this time Sauron and the King of Ninjas quickly dodged. The opponent's body is huge, but they are small and flexible. After Sauron and the King of Ninjas have finished attacking, Rog also joined the battle. "Okay, the desert turned into a monster. Try the power of plants." Roger held 3 walnuts in his hand. The plant fruit energy in the body is quickly injected into the 3 walnuts. These 3 walnut trees have also been modified and are now further expanded into their forms. "Come out, walnut heavy armor." The 3 walnuts quickly changed their shapes, one of them turned into a lower body armor, one turned into an upper body armor, and one turned into a head armor. The 3 armors are all covered on Rog's body. Except for Rog's eyes, other places are protected like a heavy armored knight. "It's here again," Chopper and Usopp said in shock. Rog had used this powerful protective armor before when he was fighting in the rain. Now Rog will use it again in the next battle. Smoker looked at Rog and said, "The boy who manipulates plants has so many new tricks." Rog was wearing walnut heavy armor, and transformed 2 weapons again. One is a tree stump. After the stump was infused with the energy of the plant fruit, it changed rapidly, and the roots grabbed Rog's left arm. There is a cm hole in the front end. Stump air cannon. The additional weapon on Rog's left arm is the stump air cannon. This was also used in the battle in the Rainland. In addition, there is a handful of iron birch saplings on the right hand. Iron birch is a rare plant in the world, and their trees are harder than steel. Of course the plant Alabasta did not grow. Instead, it was purchased from foreign merchants in the Rainy Land. Rog underwent extensive remodeling before heading here from the Rainlands. Now quickly inject plant fruit energy into the iron birch saplings. This iron birch sapling grows rapidly. And change the shape according to Rog's will. In the end it turned into a sharp sword. Iron birch. Great sword. Rog held the iron birch sword in his right hand. The current iron birch sword is extremely sharp. Originally, the hardness of iron birch was harder than steel, but it became even harder after modification. Rog has a stake air cannon on his left arm and an iron birch sword on his right arm. Both arms are powerful weapons. At this time, Luffy also rushed out and said, "I also want to join the battle." Rog said, "Okay, beat him to his knees." The two rushed towards the Sphinx. The Sphinx growled and rushed towards the two men. Rog and Luffy took the Sphinx away from the place where the wounded gathered before as soon as possible. After all, it's too dangerous there. In this way, Waiwei and Jiaka can continue to command and treat the wounded. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 314. Jiaka looked at the wounded and said to Waiwei, "Your Majesty Waiwei, I will quickly notify the cavalry units and carriages of the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th legions in the east, west and south to come over to help transport the wounded." Waiwei said, "Okay, let's do it quickly." Jiaka hurriedly communicated with the officers, while Waiwei continued to command and personally rescued the wounded. In the series of battles just now, the Fifth Army lost 5,000 to 6,000 people. Of course, they had already retreated. The First Legion that came to support lost up to people. There are less than surviving troops here. Among them were hundreds of seriously injured people. More than 1,000 people were slightly injured. The only ones who maintain the battlefield are Smoker, Sanji, and Rog and Luffy, who arrived later. Chopper and Nami also came over. Chopper walked to Waiwei's side and said, "Let me help treat them." Waiwei looked at Chopper and nodded, "Okay." Then she ordered the officers, "All rescue of the wounded must obey Dr. Chopper." The officers looked at the little reindeer in surprise, but immediately accepted the order. "Yes, Your Majesty Waiwei." The officers rushed to rescue the wounded under the command of Chopper. Chopper was like a doctor directing, while Nami was helping Chopper like a nurse's assistant. Chopper's superb medical skills made the king's army admire. Crocodile, on the northern edge of the abandoned town, saw the huge desert storm out of control and still failed to wipe out the enemy. And the Sphinx was in turn dealt with by the opponent using Desert Storm. "Oh, I really didn't expect it." "They are still very smart," Crocodile said. But thinking that Cobra is basically about to be overwhelmed by the psychedelic potion. Crocodile felt the need to delay a little longer. After all, his purpose is to activate Pluto, not to fight endlessly with each other. Now that the opponent has someone like Smoker, he must be fighting until I don't know the year of the monkey. Crocodile didn't bother to go to such lengths, and now he just needs to continue to drag the opponent down. "I don't have that much time to spend with you," Crocodile said. He concentrated the power in his body and concentrated it on his right arm again. This time, he aimed his right arm at the desert in front of him again and took a picture. The desert ahead shook violently. Groups of small sand dunes constantly protrude from the desert, although they become very high and finally transform into human shapes. Finally they form again the warrior with the spear. A total of 500 spear warriors are on standby here. You just need to hold on here. I will give you orders later, Crocodile said. Although the spear warriors took out 500 and 1000, they were far inferior to the fighting power of the Sphinx. But these spear warriors are scattered and flexible, and can properly create chaos for their opponents. Crocodile's body quickly turned into sand and then floated away. Bell in the sky has been circling to investigate and monitor here. Bell was deeply shocked after seeing the Sphinx and the huge desert storm before. Although Crocodile doesn't know what's going on now, he still felt that it was better to continue monitoring. Although Crocodile could not catch up to him, he could not defeat Crocodile either. In the abandoned town below, Mr. 4 and Rasu had snacks and drinks together. Crocodile brought some food and drink here, which was almost enjoyed by both of them. Ms. Merry Christmas was thinking about the problem beside them sadly. Mr. 4, you, Guang and your dog are eating. The situation we are facing now is very critical. The other party is very powerful. Of course, the boss is there to support us now, Ms. Merry Christmas said worriedly. Mr. 4 and Rasu looked at him. A person and a dog all have silly expressions. This. Mr. 4 said slowly. Ouch. Rasu shouted. After seeing Merry Christmas, Ms. said helplessly, forget it, just pretend I didn't say it. At this moment, suddenly a burst of sand floated over and quickly turned back into a human form. Crocodile looked at them with a sullen face. Boss, said Ms. Merry Christmas. Crocodile looked at the two of them and said, okay, you have a new mission now. Ms. Merry Christmas had some weird premonition and said, new mission. Crocodile said, you need to command the legion I created to defend this town. But remember that my troops are not unlimited consumption. So use with caution. Command the troops, said Ms. Merry Christmas. Mr. 4 looked at Crocodile stupidly. You will know when you come with me. Crocodile didn't say much, and directly turned into a sandstorm, rolled up 2 people and a dog, and brought them to the north of the abandoned town. Here Crocodile puts 2 people and 1 dog down. Ms. Merry Christmas said angrily, boss, if you don't explain clearly. Her eyes were quickly drawn to groups of strong warriors with spears above the desert. These spear warriors are formed of sand, but they are so lifelike that they are almost like the real thing. Are these the legions you are talking about? Ms. Merry Christmas asked in shock. Crocodile said, yes. This is the Desert Death Army. Now I will hand over the command to you immediately. Crocodile walked further forward and signaled to the Desert Death Army. The spear warriors formed from sand all half kneeled on the ground to salute. It's like a group of warriors worshipping their king. Okay, now these 2 are the generals I have assigned to you. You must obey their orders, Crocodile ordered. Just like this, 500 spear warriors obeyed the orders of Ms. Merry Christmas and Mr. 4. And Mr. 4 is so stupid, in fact it can be said that Ms. Merry Christmas is solely responsible for the command. I can now command this legion, said Ms. Merry Christmas. Crocodile looked at her and said, of course. You are now a general. Although they are not many in number, their combat effectiveness can be said to be extremely powerful. Ms. Merry Christmas. Come closer and take a closer look at the spear warriors formed by the sand. These spear warriors are extremely strong. Although the spears they hold are made of sand, they are now as good as steel. Okay, boss, said Ms. Merry Christmas. Crocodile looked at her, his eyes filled with trust and at the same time not disobeying. Okay, you have to hold on here and hold on to the enemies. Most of the king's army is no longer able to fight. But there are still a few difficult guys to deal with. You and Mr. 4 have to do your best, Crocodile said. Ms. Merry Christmas had nothing to say, and said respectfully, fight your best to complete the task, boss. Crocodile's body then melted into sand and floated away. Ms. Merry Christmas. Look at this Desert Death Army composed of spear warriors. I really want to taste what it's like to be a general. Or maybe as a princess, I can command the 3 armies like this. MS said Merry Christmas. Mr. 4, who served as a general with him, was still looking at the powerful legion in front of him stupidly. MS Merry Christmas. Suddenly I remembered something. By the way, where is Mr. 2 at such an important moment? I haven't seen him since I left Arapena. MS said Merry Christmas. In fact, Mr. 2 was currently among the surviving king's troops helping Wai Wei treat the wounded. After the Shemale defeated Zaros in the city, he suddenly realized that he had the ability to imitate and didn't have to run for his life. Quickly imitated as the king's army and mixed into it. When Wai Wei led the 3 armies to attack, he also mixed in. Originally, Mr. 2 wanted to observe the opportunity and move. But Wang Jun and Wai Wei's strong will unexpectedly infected him. It made him unwilling to continue to sabotage. Even he began to agree with Wei Wei and Wang Jun's spirit of sacrifice and ideals. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Li Er A Dream. Chapter 315. The king's army risked their lives and fought desperately for the future of Alabasta. Wai Wei's strength and bravery filled Mr. 2 with admiration. Mr. 2 transformed into a king's army soldier holding a rifle and walked among the groups of king's army wounded. Vivi is helping to heal the wounded soldiers of the king's army. Hurry up, bring the bandages, Wai Wei said. Beside a soldier with a chest injury, Wai Wei was nervously treating him. Wai Wei took the bandage and quickly continued to help the king's army soldier treat the wound. Princess Wai Wei, the soldier of the king's army, barely raised his head and said to Wai Wei. Wai Wei looked at him with a serious face and said, "Don't move, your wound has finally stopped bleeding. You lie down quickly, and I will bandage it for you." The king's army soldier quickly lay down and looked at Princess Wai Wei, who was treating him hard with tears in his eyes. Mr. 2 sees everything. She is really a princess who cares about her people. Mr. 2 turned into a soldier with twitching face and was deeply moved. Mr. 2 has traveled through the Great Route and many countries and regions around the world with his imitation ability. I have also seen many rulers, large and small. Some of them are brutal and arrogant, some are strict and conscientious, some are ambiguous, some are mercenary, and some love fame. But almost all rulers have one thing in common: for profit. Some so-called sage monarchs are also sanctimonious hypocrites. Their goal is only the interests and reputation of their own ruling group. But at this time today, the Princess Wai Wei that Mr. 2 saw was so serious about treating injured ordinary soldiers. This is not a show for others to see. And it is indeed the kind of care for the people that comes from the heart. In this moment, continue to look around. Everyone, whether it's Princess Wai Wei, the soldiers of the king's army who fought side by side, Jaka, the Minister of Defense, and Dr. Chopper. All are helping each other. Seeing this situation, Mr. 2 couldn't help but think. Is Baroque Studio really doing the right thing? Now that they are very close, Mr. 2 can kill Princess Wei Wei as long as he takes action in time. And his ability can completely evacuate here quickly after assassinating Princess Wai Wei. Should we do this? Mr. 2 lowered his head and thought. Not like everyone else at Baroque Studio. Although he is a Shemale, Mr. 2 admires people with principles. People who have their own goals and ideals. This is why he joined Baroque Studio. Crocodile promised to build a great utopia at the beginning. The veteran members of each Baroque Studio will become one of the heroes. This is also an ideal. But what is placed in front of Mr. 2 represents the ideal of a princess, or even a girl, to make Alabasta better. The same is ideal. Why must one party's ideal be shattered? Mr. 2 is in the midst of painful choices. In the midst of the swing, after thinking for a while, Mr. 2 was still undecided about his inner choice. Here, please help me get the bag beside you. Suddenly Wai Wei's voice sounded. The king's army soldier transformed into Mr. 2 raised his head and looked forward. I saw Princess Wai Wei looking at him, her eyes were full of friendliness. Mr. Two looked at the bag on the side and picked it up subconsciously. This is filled with water. Okay, okay. Mr. Two took the bag into Princess Weiwei's hands. Princess Weiwei brought the water bag over and said, "Thank you, soldier. But may I ask your name?" Mr. Two stuttered a little and said, "Ah, Ben Sam." Princess Weiwei said very kindly, "Thank you, Sam. There are many other wounded here. Please take care of them." "Okay." Mr. Two nodded and said, "Okay." Weiwei said politely, "Thank you very much." Then the princess continued to feed the wounded with the water bag she had just taken. Mr. Two glanced at Weiwei for a few times and then stepped back. Mr. Two was shaking all over. He gritted his teeth and whispered, "I'm really useless." Princess Weiwei can be so polite and caring to ordinary soldiers, which really makes Mr. Two admire her from the bottom of her heart. There is almost no princess in any country who is so strong and gentle. Mr. Two has wanted to assassinate such a princess many times before. The king's army soldiers turned into Mr. Two left amid the bustle and chaos. In front of the Sphinx, a huge monster created by crocodile, which has not yet been killed. Rog in walnut heavy armor and Luffy alive and kicking rushed over. "Wow, what a monster," Luffy said happily as he charged. "This Straw Hat Kid with the rubber body is full of drive. After traveling thousands of miles to get here, I can finally fight quickly." Rog looked at the Sphinx, leaving only 2 eye holes in his heavy walnut armor. He wears a staked air cannon on his left arm, and holds a great iron birch sword on his right arm. It is both offensive and defensive, with complete range and range attacks. While charging, Rog thought about the weakness of this huge monster. The Sphinx is a giant monster with a body made of sand and the wings of a sphinx. According to Sanji and the others, this huge monster can only truly defeat it by constantly knocking the sand off its body as a whole. "Ow oh oh." The Sphinx opened its huge lion's maw and roared ferociously at the two. Along with the roar, a huge wind and sand blows over. Although the size of the Sphinx has been greatly reduced, it is so powerful just by sound demonstrations. Rog and Luffy are facing the wind and sand. Rog quickly charged the staked air cannon on his left arm. Meanwhile continue to approach the Sphinx. Finally, we arrived less than 20 meters away from the Sphinx. The Sphinx lunged at Roger. Roger aimed the staked air cannon on his long charged left arm at the Sphinx. "Try this." The staked air cannon on Rog's left arm fired a powerful blast of air cannon balls. The Sphinx was hit directly on the head. Suddenly its head exploded violently, and a large amount of sand was blown away. The Sphinx who was hit just came back to his senses. Luffy jumped into the air again. Rubber Tempest. Luffy punched out both fists rapidly in mid-air. Dozens of fists hit the Sphinx within 3 seconds. The giant Sphinx was severely injured by 2 consecutive huge blows, and its body suddenly fell to the ground. Huge sand was splashed up. Luffy fell to the ground again, and seeing the Sphinx like this, he jumped up excitedly. "Okay, it's knocked down," Luffy said happily. Rog looked at the fallen Sphinx and said, "No, this monster will not be killed so easily. It is absolutely impossible for this huge sand monster to be wiped out so easily." Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 317. The Ninja King stuffed the explosive bamboo tube into the position where the Sphinx's right wing connects to its back, and then jumped away quickly with a few somersaults. "Ow!" The Sphinx quickly rose to his feet again. At this time, the explosive bamboo tube on its back where the right wing connects to the body has been burned to the end. Boom! There was a huge explosion, and sand flew from the Sphinx's back. The wings of the giant vulture on the right fell off and quickly turned into sand. The gigantic monster lost another wing. The Sphinx roared angrily. "Ow oh oh!" However, this powerful monster did not give in. It continued to use the sand on its body to quickly restore the huge vulture wings on the right side of its back. Losing a wing this time, the loss to the Sphinx was even greater than Rog's attack before. Because this time the Sphinx lost more sand. After being attacked by Sauron and the Ninja King in succession, the Sphinx repaired itself. But Luffy has already twisted his right arm into a twist. Luffy struck the Sphinx in the head with his right arm like a spiral. Rubber dot screw gun. Luffy's fist is powerful and has the power of rotation. The huge body of the Sphinx did not dodge either. Boom. Luffy's fist hit the head of the huge sand monster. The Sphinx was shot in the head with its giant human face. Huge chunks of sand flew up. The giant monster was wounded in the head. It's not over. At this time, Rog suddenly aimed the staked air cannon on the left arm at the Sphinx's head. The wooden pile air cannon has once again accumulated extremely powerful power. Boom. This cannon was blasted out. A powerful air cannonball hit the Sphinx in the head. The head that was originally injured by Luffy was hit by an air cannon. Violent sand flew up. Take advantage of this time. Sauron rushed to Rog and said to Rog, "Rog, can you think of a way to throw me up?" Rog looked at Sauron and said, "No problem." The stake air cannon on Rog's left arm was charged again. The strength accumulated this time is enough. Sauron jumped up quickly, and Rog aimed the stake air cannon at Sauron's feet. Boom. The stake air cannon fired an air cannonball, and Sauron was on top. Zoro flew up in one go by the impact and thrust of the air cannonball from below. The impact produced by this air cannon was not particularly huge, but it was enough to knock Sauron into the air. Sauron quickly flew to the position around the head of the Sphinx. Here Zoro wields 3 samurai swords and begins to perform a sword move. 3 swordsman style. Giant Buddha slash. In the hands of Sauron, Suezu, Geash, and Eyuan. The 3 samurai swords were cut 9 times in a row. The 9 sword energies cut the Sphinx's head horizontally. The damaged head of the Sphinx exploded for a while, scattering into sand. Pretty. The Ninja King, who has always been silent, said in admiration. Sauron's body spun in the air for a while, and fell back to the ground. Rog and Luffy also praised Sauron's powerful attack power. "So handsome," Luffy shouted happily. Rog looked at Sauron and said, "What a powerful attack." Sauron also said calmly, "Your cooperation is very good." But the 4 of them immediately turned their attention back to the Sphinx. Sphinxes now have their heads destroyed. All that remains is the body of the lion and a pair of huge vulture wings on its back. "Ha ha ha, the head is gone," Luffy shouted excitedly. "Don't be too happy," Roger said with serious eyes. "I saw the headless Sphinx quickly flowing sand on the body, and gathered towards the head again. The head quickly grew back. The Sphinx of the Sphinx vulture wing has been restored again. But this time the Sphinx was further reduced in size. The current Sphinx, after a series of blows, is less than 4 stories high. Okay, let's continue to attack it. Completely destroy it," Rog said. "Okay," Luffy shouted along with Zoro and the Ninja King. When the 4 were about to continue their attack, suddenly, a force formed by the wind flew over and hit the Sphinx heavily on the head. The force formed by this wind is so powerful that it hit the Sphinx's head with sand flying. Seeing the attack, Rog quickly turned his head to look sideways. "It's her," Roger said. The 4 of them also looked towards the side and rear. "I saw the spring goddess holding an iron axe and casting magic. The spring goddess with long golden hair is pure and elegant, holding the iron axe high with her right arm. The spring water goddess whispered a spell in her mouth, and along with the magic spell, a strong wind formed around the iron axe. The wind blows up the sand around the spring goddess, and the white dress on her body flutters along with the wind and sand. Wow, so cool," Luffy said with his mouth wide open. "She truly deserves to be a goddess," Rog said with emotion. The wind around the iron axe raised in the right arm of the goddess of springs is getting stronger and stronger. Finally, the wind formed a magic power entity like a bow and arrow. Bow and arrow of the wind. The goddess of spring said in a high-pitched, calm voice. This 3-meter-long wind bow shot at the Sphinx. The Sphinx just got its head back. But the bow and arrow of the wind is already close at hand. However, this wind bow and arrow did not hit the head of this huge monster. The whistling of the bow and arrow of the wind mixed with the gust of wind hit the Sphinx's neck. Boom! The bow and arrow of the wind hit the Sphinx's neck, and the huge force tore the Sphinx's thick neck apart. The neck was completely torn apart in just 1 second. The huge head of the Sphinx also fell down. The huge head detached from the main body quickly turned into sand. The goddess of the fountain made such a powerful attack with the iron axe, an ancient magical weapon. This shocked Rog and the others. It's really powerful. No, it's powerful magic, Rog said with emotion. Sauron looked at the Sphinx whose head had been beaten, and said, Magic Island, there is such a powerful magic. I really don't know what will happen when we get there. Magic Island is a mysterious island in the depths of the Great Root. There is the most mysterious magical country in the world. Almost all the magic in the world comes from there. The fountain goddess is just the tip of the iceberg of the Magic Island magic. The Sphinx, whose head was destroyed, used sand from its body to restore its head. Sand began to collect on the body of this gigantic Sphinx-winged monster toward its head. The head grew back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 318. The goddess of spring also took this opportunity to put away the iron axe again, and then replaced it with a golden axe. The right arm of the spring goddess raised the golden axe high. A mantra was whispered from her mouth. Sparks began to shoot around the golden axe, followed by a burst of flame. The golden axe began to burn. These flames are getting bigger and bigger, and even seem to be alive. Flames began to spread from the golden axe and formed a bird-like entity. This is. Rog observed carefully. The bird formed by the flame is like a phoenix born from the flame. The goddess of springs looked at the Sphinx, and the fire phoenix created by the golden axe in her right arm was also aimed at the Sphinx. Flaming Phoenix. The phoenix formed by the flames was 5 meters long, and it quickly dragged the flames and flew towards the Sphinx. During the flight, a large number of sparks shot down from the fire phoenix's body. Like a bird shedding its feathers. The fire phoenix quickly flew to the body of the Sphinx. The huge monster was hit hard in the chest. Flame explosions scattered, knocking the Sphinx's massive body down. The blow just now was mixed with explosion and burning, and its power can be said to be dwarfed by the Navy's heavy artillery. 10 heavy artillery shells with a diameter of 1 meter may not be able to have this kind of attack effect. What a powerful force, Rog said in shock. The Sphinx was knocked down by the fire phoenix. It's so handsome, Luffy said excitedly. Sauron looked at the fallen Sphinx, and then at the fountain. Magic can be so powerful, Sauron whispered. The king of ninjas is no surprise. He knew more about the goddess of springs than anyone else. Ace in the distance also saw the fire phoenix that appeared just now. He combined with the magician identity of the goddess of spring water. After he joined the Whitebeard pirates, he often got reports about the great roots and various strange things in the world. Magic Island is full of talents, Ace said with emotion. After being knocked down, the Sphinx struggled to get up. This huge monster began to recover again using the sand on its body. The Sphinx's body has recovered again. However, its size has become smaller again, and now it is only about 10 meters high. The spring goddess picked up the silver axe again. She raised the silver axe high above her head, and began to whisper a spell in her mouth. Ancient spells were whispered. Frost began to form around the silver axe. There was more and more frost, and snowflakes and ice began to form. The ice formed a huge mixture of concentrated blue ice on the silver axe. The mixture was like a football-sized hockey puck, but it was spinning rapidly. Ice explosive cannonball. The spring goddess said in a high-pitched voice. The sphere-like ice blast shell shot out and flew towards the Sphinx. Ow oh oh. The Sphinx growled. Ice blast shells hit the Sphinx's body. The astonishing ice energy contained in it was released. It quickly enveloped the huge monster formed by the sand. Sphinx's body was quickly wrapped in ice. This 10-meter-tall behemoth quickly turned into an ice sculpture. And it also maintains the shape of the wings of the Sphinx vulture. After the Sphinx became a giant ice sculpture, it stood firmly on the desert. A giant ice sculpture stands above the desert, and this great contrast is an unimaginably spectacular sight. Rog looked at the Sphinx, who had turned into a giant ice sculpture, and said with a sigh, "It's an unimaginable attack. The magic attack of the fountain goddess is actually so powerful." At this moment, the goddess of spring suddenly said, "Crush it quickly. My ice will still melt." Roger and the others quickly recovered after hearing this. "It is good." Rog, Zoro, Luffy, and the Ninja King all attacked together. Woodpile air cannon. Cut the mountains and cut. Rubber. Machine gun. Explosive shuriken. The four violently attacked the Sphinx that had turned into a giant ice sculpture together. A cacophony of explosions interspersed with the sound of cutting and striking. Huge ice sculptures began to crumble. This time, there was no distinction between the main body, and the whole body was broken into hundreds of broken ice cubes. The ice cubes are filled with frozen sand. Even if the ice cubes melted, the sand was completely transformed into ordinary sand. The Sphinx was completely wiped out. After the battle, Rog, Zoro, Luffy and the King of Ninja looked at the broken ice on the desert. He fought such a powerful monster before, but it ended up like this in the end. "Finally kill it," Zaron said. "But we haven't completely ended the battle yet," Rog said. "The Sphinx just killed is just a powerful weapon for Crocodile. To really defeat Crocodile, that is the real victory. Crocodile is very powerful, waiting for everyone will be a very tough battle." At this moment, the goddess of spring water suddenly knelt down. Rog and Sauron both looked at the spring goddess. The goddess of spring water has become much weaker now. Using magic attack just now consumes a lot. Especially the previous fire phoenix and the more powerful ice blast shells are extremely energy consuming and mana consuming. The spring water goddess was now half kneeling, and she looked up at Rog and the others. "I'm fine, just a little tired." The spring goddess stood up again and said, "Now the Sphinx is really completely wiped out anyway. You guys are really great," a rich voice sounded. "I saw Smoker coming over." This man, as muscular as steel, walked in front of the shattered ice. These ice cubes are the mighty and majestic Sphinx before. Of course, being able to defeat the Sphinx was the result of a fierce battle between many people. Smoker naturally put in a lot of effort. If it weren't for the Sphinx being weakened by Smog, Rog, Luffy, Sauron and the King of Ninjas, the goddess of spring water would not be able to use the ice blast shell to freeze the huge monster. Roger and Smoke looked at each other and said, "Okay, we can move on." After hearing this, Smoker said, "Yes. Crocodile hasn't been dealt with yet. Everyone still has a powerful enemy Crocodile to deal with. Just now, the Sphinx and the huge desert storm were so powerful and terrifying. Crocodile itself is really powerful enough to make people unbelievable." North of the abandoned town, Ms. Merry Christmas and Mr. Four together command the Spear Warriors formed by 500 Sands created by Crocodile. This small but very elite force was quickly deployed to the northern edge of the abandoned town under the command of Ms. Christmas Merry. Ms. Merry Christmas is actually the real commander. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 319. Listen carefully, now we need to defend this abandoned town. We must definitely hold on here. We cannot charge blindly. Ms. Merry Christmas ordered loudly. This fat old woman has always had a violent personality, but now that she is a general, she is even more domineering. On the side, Mr. Four and his pet dog Cannonball Dog Rasu looked at Ms. Merry Christmas in an innocent manner. Ms. Merry Christmas continued her lecture, "You must use the houses in abandoned towns as fortifications to fight against the enemy. And my Deputy General Mr. Four will serve as powerful fire support." Mr. Four looked at Ms. Merry Christmas and said slowly, what, ah. Ms. Merry Christmas glanced at him and said, "You just keep shooting out cannonballs with your dog. Bombard the opponent." Mr. Four had a somewhat understanding expression and continued to speak slowly, "It turns out, it's in this way. Merry Christmas to Ms. The spear warriors formed by these sands are powerful in battle. But it requires more powerful fire support. And the Mr. 4 plus the gun barrel Golaju is definitely comparable to an artillery unit. Mr. 4's metal bat and the shells spit out by Rasu are enough to surpass countless advanced artillery. Start deployment, Ms. Merry Christmas ordered. 500 spear warriors formed from sand quickly started to deploy. Under the command of Ms. Merry Christmas, these spear warriors began to dig fortifications and destroy the terrain. There are still many old houses in the abandoned town, and a lot of renovations have been carried out using these houses to prepare for battle. And Ms. Merry Christmas not only ordered these spear warriors to prepare, she personally dug caves to prepare to assist in the battle. Many caves and tunnels have been excavated in the abandoned town, which can be used to assist Ms. Merry Christmas in the guard battle they are about to face. Tunnels and caverns extend in all directions, and were quickly excavated beneath the abandoned town. Mr. Four and Lesu were not idle either. Mr. Four picked up Lesu and asked him to vomit out some shells at each place. Not only high explosive shells, fragmentation shells, incendiary shells, smoke shells, and various special shells are all available. In battle, Mr. Four no longer has to worry about insufficient shells due to problems such as Lesu's fatigue. In previous battles, Mr. Four's cannon barrel dog Lesu was exhausted due to excessive firing of shells, which made it difficult to provide sufficient shells in the future. In this way, shells are prepared in advance of the battle, and they can be used whenever they arrive at a place. For this reason, Mr. Four would give Lesu delicious food and drinks every time he spit out a group of cannonballs in a place where cannonballs were stored. Rasu also kept spitting out shells enthusiastically. Ms. Merry Christmas commanded a strong defense in the entire abandoned town. Among them, the north is still the focus. In the north of the abandoned town, Jaka sent orders to the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th legions that surrounded the abandoned town to the east, south, and west. Each of the 3 legions sent troops to the north to support them. The north side of the abandoned town, which had suffered extremely heavy losses, was once again surrounded by nearly elite soldiers of the king's army. The First Army, which was almost destroyed before, and the earlier Fifth Army completely withdrew from the battlefield. However, among the nearly elite soldiers of the king's army, there were elite cavalry troops. They all have good mobility and field capabilities. Vivi, Gaga, as well as Rogue, Zoro, Smoker, Hina, Luffy, Usopp, Chopper, Nami, Sanji and Ace, as well as CP3's Phlox and Zaros. After reorganizing the army in a mighty manner, they approached the abandoned town from the north to the south. Bell hovering in the sky has been reporting various situations. In the phone bug, Waiwei and Jiaka got Bell's information. Your Majesty Waiwei, I found that the enemy has begun to deploy large-scale defenses in the abandoned town. You must be careful, Bell reported. We got it. Thank you, Bell. Please continue to investigate and monitor, Waiwei said to the phone bug. Of order, Your Majesty, Waiwei, Bell said across from the phone bug. Then both parties hung up the phone bug. Waiwei rode on a healthy horse and looked at the abandoned town ahead. Now she, her friends and the army behind her are about to break into this abandoned town and rescue her father. Dangers lie ahead, and Crocodile is here. Attacking from here, I don't know how huge the sacrifice will be. But all difficulties cannot stop the will of the people. This is not only Wai Wei's will, but everyone's thoughts. Jiaka, who was also on the horse, said to Wai Wei, "Okay, Your Majesty Wai Wei, give the order quickly." Wai Wei nodded and said, "Okay, now the cavalry unit is the first to cut into the abandoned town. The infantry unit will follow." A cavalry force of more than people was ordered. These cavalry units on the backs of healthy horses and camels began to march towards the abandoned town. Rog and Usopp looked at each other and moved forward. Smoker and Hina also entered this abandoned town. After all, both Rog and Smoker are foreign forces. Wai Wei and Jaka couldn't order them. So Rog and Smoker decide when to fight based on their own judgment. Cavalry units began to enter the abandoned town. On the northern edge of the abandoned town, Ms. Merry Christmas hiding in an old house. Watch the incoming cavalry from the windows here. They are coming in. Then greet them well. Ms. said Merry Christmas. She is both proud and nervous now. After all, there are still a lot of enemies. Then Ms. Merry Christmas quickly got into a hole below. In this abandoned town, Ms. Merry Christmas dug countless burrows and tunnels extending in all directions. Many of them lead to old houses or some streets. With these burrows and tunnels, Ms. Christmas is able to constantly move and fight. The cavalry of the king's army who entered the abandoned town held rifles and sabers, and kept an eye on the surrounding movements. Now there is crocodile hidden here, and I don't know what danger it will be. When a large number of King's army cavalry entered here, among the old houses and in the streets, a large number of spear warriors formed by sand are preparing to attack. Rog and Sauron are marching here. But for the sake of safety, everyone dismounted. Usopp looked extremely nervous, with the slingshot in his hand and ready to strike at any time. Captain Usopp has entered the depths of the enemy and is always ready to fight. Usopp observed the surroundings at any time to aim. Chopper followed Usopp very carefully. The little fellow was very cautiously watching his surroundings. And the nose keeps smelling some smells. The enemy is made of sand, so it's probably hard to smell it, Chopper said. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 321. At this time, Luffy, who was being beaten, suddenly had a plan. Rubber dot balloon. Luffy took in a sharp breath. His body expanded violently, like a giant balloon. In this way, the three spear warriors were caught off guard and were bounced off by the balloon. Luffy spits out the gas quickly, and falls to the ground below. "Okay, it really hurts me," Luffy said. The three spear warriors rushed over quickly just now. The three spear warriors roared and ran towards Luffy at the same time. Luffy slammed his hands up his back and quickly pushed towards one of the spear warriors. Rubber bazooka. Luffy's heavy blow sent the spear warrior flying. Finally, when the spear warrior landed, the top of the house was smashed to pieces, completely turning into ordinary sand. Luffy quickly jumped into the air again, and then aimed his feet at a spear warrior. Rubber spear. Luffy extended his legs like two spears to attack the spear warrior's head. Puff. This spear warrior's head and upper body were smashed by Luffy. The rest of his body turned into sand and scattered on the ground. With the last spear warrior left, Luffy fell to the ground. The spear warrior rushed towards Luffy like a healthy horse. Rubber machine gun. Luffy punched more than 10 punches in less than a second. A fist like a machine gun hit the spear warrior's body. The spear warrior's body was smashed into loose sand. The 4 spear warriors who besieged Luffy were all wiped out. After the spear warriors were eliminated, Luffy continued to fight other enemies. Sauron is very majestic in battle. More than a dozen spear warriors rushed towards Sauron. Zoro held Yuki sword and Onitsu in his hands. The blades of 2 samurai swords reflected the light of the sun. A spear warrior approached Sauron, and with a spear he struck Sauron in the chest. The snow walker on Sauron's right arm blocked the opponent's spear, and the ghost on his left arm took the opportunity to slash horizontally at the spear warrior's neck. Puff! The head of the spear warrior was chopped off. The entire spear warrior's body began to quickly crumble into ordinary sand. Two more spear warriors rushed over, swung their spears and stabbed at Sauron's abdomen together. Zorro waved Yukino and Onitsu, and jumped into the air. Sword style. Rhino Hui. Sauron rotated his sword's degrees and hit the heads of the two spear warriors. The bodies of these two spear warriors also quickly turned into sand. After the two spear warriors were killed, 12 spear warriors surrounded Sauron from all sides. They waved their spears and stabbed Sauron. Zorro suddenly pulled out the word Hedeo from his waist. Take it with your mouth. 3 Swordsman style. Sword Wolf style. Sauron's body fluttered like willow leaves in the wind, avoiding the dense spear attacks of the spear warriors. After dodging the attacks of the spear warriors, Sauron's arms and body gathered strength. 3 Sword style. Tornado. Zorro's 3 samurai swords spun along with his body. Like a tornado. The 12 spear warriors were all attacked by sword energy in turn. But even though the tornado is a large-scale attack, but Sauron focused on killing the heads of the spear warriors. The heads of the spear warriors were destroyed by the dense sword energy and direct slashing. These spear warriors quickly turned into ordinary sand. After killing these spear warriors, Zorro continued galloping on the battlefield wielding 3 katana swords. Smoker was very powerful in this battle. The smoke hunter's body turned into smoke. Those spear warriors had nothing to do with him. Every time the spear came to assassinate, it was as if the assassination had been caught in the smoke. And Smoker, whether it is fist or 10-hand attack, is enough to destroy these spear warriors with one blow. What made Smoker even more unusual in the fierce battle was that Ace showed great fighting power. Although it was only the tip of the iceberg, Ace smashed the heads of the spear warriors with his flaming fist. Ace now waved a pair of flaming fists, aiming at the attacking spear warrior. Although Ace just wiped out the spear warriors with one punch, he hasn't shown his true skills yet. Of course, although these spear warriors are far stronger than ordinary people, to Ace, they are just some enemies that are not discernible. Ace's fire fist hit the spear warrior's head with one punch, and the opponent's head quickly exploded like being hit by a grenade. Smoker and Ace are considered the most efficient to eliminate the spear warriors. Colonel Hina is also very strong in the battle. With her strong fist and foot martial arts skills and the ability of the threshold fruit, she wiped out a large number of spear warriors. In addition, the soldiers of the king's army fought bloody battles and wiped out a large number of spear warriors. Ms. Merry Christmas poked its head out of a hole in an alley. She looked at the situation on the battlefield. Although our own side used surprise attacks and ambushes, they killed some cavalrymen of the king's army. But the opponent has many masters, and although the king's army is not as powerful as the spear warrior alone. But by virtue of the number, it is still possible to annihilate some spear warriors. Not long after, the spear warriors lost more than people. This is not a solution. Okay, Mr. 4, it's your turn to show your strength. Ms. said Merry Christmas. Mr. 4 was also in the cave below at this time. Not long after, Mr. 4 poked his head out of a hole in the ground. He swung a cannonball and knocked it away with the 4-ton metal bat in his hand. Boom! The shell flew towards a street where the king's army was located. The shell hit there, and there was a violent explosion. The 2 king's cavalrymen and their horses were covered in blood and flesh. At this time, Waiwei, Jiaka, and Sanji, who were not far from here, saw this scene. It's the cannonballs just now. The cannonball attack outside the king's palace was also a group of cannonballs flying over like this. Could it be? Waiwei suddenly remembered something. After she broke into the Baroque studio, she inquired about various information inside the Baroque studio. especially the information of those senior agents. After the king's palace was attacked by shells and no shells were found nearby, Wei suspected that it was the powerful senior agent. He is Mr. 4, and his cannon-like dog that can spit out cannonballs, Wei said. Jaka looked at Princess Wei and said, Your Majesty Wei, you understand this enemy? Wei nodded and said, Yes, this agent can hit the shells with a metal bat like a baseball. Sanji looked strangely at the cannonballs that continued to fly over. These cannonballs were hit like giant baseballs. Moreover, the sound of firing could not be heard, but some sounds of blows could be vaguely heard. So that's how it is, Sanji said. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 322. Suddenly a cannonball flew over again, just about to hit here. Sanji stepped forward suddenly and jumped. Kick the cannonball with your right foot. The shell flew to an old uninhabited house in the distance, and it exploded violently. Sanji also relied on the location where the shells came, and rushed over there. I'll go take a look, Sanji said. Jiaka is protecting Wei. Sanji quickly rushed to the starting position where the cannonballs were hit just now. By judging the flight arc of the artillery shells, it is possible to determine from which direction they came. Sanji ended up in an alley, where Sanji didn't see anyone. Just found a dark hole in the ground. Sanji walked to the side of the cave and observed the cave. Could it be that they are hiding here, Sanji said. Sanji looked at the cave and didn't say much. Just jump in. After the attack just now, Mr. 4 quickly arrived at the exit of another underground cave. Here, Mr. 4 picked up another red cannonball. This is exactly an incendiary shell. Mr. 4 throws up the red flaming cannonball and then swings the metal bat to hit it. Boom! This burning shell was shot out. Incendiary shells hit a house where the cavalry of the king's army gathered. After a violent explosion, these cavalrymen of the king's army were shrouded in flames. These king's army cavalry struggled in the flames, and then fell to the ground screaming. After firing the incendiary cannonball, Mr. 4 picked up a group of black cannonballs and beat them out with the metal bat. After these shells hit the king's army, they exploded, and countless nails inside flew horizontally under the impact of the explosion. The king's army suffered heavy casualties. The speed and penetration of the nails under the impact of the explosion were no less than that of bullets. While Mr. 4 was attacking continuously, in the hole below him, Sanji was already close to him. When Sanji saw this fat figure fighting here, kick against etiquette. Sanji used one foot to kick the attacking Mr. 4 away from the hole below with astonishing force. Mr. 4's fat body flew out of the hole. It fell heavily on an old house and collapsed the old house. Sanji jumped out of the hole, holding a cigarette in his mouth and looking at Mr. 4. At this time, Mr. 4 climbed up from the ruins of the old house in embarrassment. Mr. 4 was now covered in dust. After standing up, he raised his head and looked at Sanji. Sanji can now clearly see the appearance of Mr. 4. This is a fat and burly boy-like person. Underneath the short blonde hair is a face like a fat pig. It's cute and ridiculous. But no one would think that this is the murderous agent of Baroque Studios. Hey, are you an agent from Baroque Studio? Sanji asked. Mr. 4 looked at Sanji fiercely. This big boy was really scary at first glance when he was angry. He raised the 4-ton metal bat in his hand and pointed it at Sanji. Asshole, kill you. Mr. 4's tone was not slow at all when he was fighting. Mr. 4 clenched the metal bat with his right arm, put the thumb of his left arm into his mouth and whistled very loudly. After the loud whistle, there was a dog barking. Wang. Sanji saw a dog rushing over quickly. This dog looks like a cannon combined with a dog. This is a cannon dog, Sanji said. Mr. Four looked at Sanji angrily and continued, "Don't talk nonsense, this is my pet dog Rasu." As if Lesu had a tacit understanding with his master, he shouted, "Woof." Mr. Four then asked Rasu to point his mouth at him. "Okay, let this curly eyebrow boy have a taste of our power," Mr. Four said. Mr. Four asked Rasu to point his mouth at him. Now Lesu is in a good state of mind and can spit out countless various shells. Sanji looked at this combination of a man and a dog. "Whatever tricks you want to play, just do it," Sanji said calmly. "Okay, Rasu will shoot a high explosive shell for him to see," Mr. Four said. Lesu's body brewed for a while, its mouth opened, and a black cannonball shot out and flew towards Mr. Four. Mr. Four swung the 4-ton bat and determined the direction to hit the black high explosive shell. Boom! The black high explosive shells changed course and flew towards Sanji. Sanji kicked hard with his right leg when the cannonball flew in front of him. This black high explosive shell flew out. It eventually landed on a nearby street and exploded. Mr. Four looked at Sanji and found that Sanji actually relied on his leg and leg skills to make a living. No wonder he was kicked out of the hole just now. Sanji looked at Mr. Four and said, "Continue." Mr. Four said to Rasu again, "Rasu, shoot the incendiary shells." Rasu's body trembled for a while, and he was rapidly brewing shells. Then it opened its mouth and spit out a red flaming cannonball. This time Rasu didn't shoot it out, but spit it out normally. Mr. Four took the shell and weighed it in his hand. "This shell will definitely make it hard for you to walk around," Mr. Four said. Yes, Sanji was a little surprised to see his opponent so confident. Mr. Four threw up the red flaming cannonball and then hit it with a metal bat. Boom! The red incendiary shell flew towards Sanji. Sanji saw the cannonball getting closer. The opponent's shells kept approaching, but Sanji suddenly felt a sense of danger. Sanji jumped away at the last moment instead of kicking the cannonball with his feet. The shell hit the ground behind Sanji. Boom! Soaring explosions and flames raged. This incendiary shell exploded with astonishing flames. Sanji saw the scene of flames after the shell exploded. "Fortunately, I just escaped in time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable." Mr. Four saw Sanji's behavior and said, "It's really strange how you know that this incendiary shell is scheduled to explode." Sanji's face became serious and asked, "Timed explosion?" Mr. Four said, "The cannonballs spit out by Rasu have contact explosions and timed explosions. The contact explosions require the cannonballs to withstand a certain impact before they can be detonated. The timed cannonballs will explode at a set time. I have already calculated it for you. Distance, and the scale on the cannonball was tampered with before striking." Sanji said, "That's it?" Mr. Four swung the metal bat again and said, "Okay, I have more types of shells for you to try. Rasu is also preparing to brew new shells. Lesu, fragmentation shells. Give me 3 at a time," Mr. Four said. Rasu brewed for a while, its body twisted for a while, and then 3 black cannonballs spit out from its mouth. The 3 black shells looked no different from the usual high explosive shells. But it is full of deadly nails. Pirate Plant Fruit. Author, Lee A Dream. Chapter 323. Mr. Four has adjusted all 3 fragmentation shells. Then he swung the metal bat and knocked all 3 shells into the air. 3 fragmentation shells flew towards Sanji violently. Sanji quickly dodges. All 3 shells exploded halfway. Groups of nails inside flew around under the impact of the explosion. Sanji was also quickly affected. Sanji quickly jumped away, but was quickly hit by more than 10 nails on his body. These more than 10 nails have invaded Sanji's body. Sanji quickly went behind an old house to avoid possible further attacks. These nails are really powerful, and their lethality is even greater than that of high explosive shells. Fragmentation shells are anti-infantry shells with a large number of nails inside, which can cause great damage to infantry. For example, although high-explosive artillery shells are very powerful to destroy buildings after they explode, they are not powerful enough against infantry. Hateful. Sanji urgently found all the nails in the wound on his body. These nails penetrated the body like bullets. Sanji quickly pulled out a small table knife from under his clothes. Using the small table knife as a scalpel, Sanji quickly dug the nails out of his body. Although sweat dripped down Sanji's face, he didn't make a sound. As a man, this little pain is nothing. But after digging out more than a dozen nails, Sanji looked at the small table knife in his hand. It was stained with his blood. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used you," Sanji said apologetically. As a chef, the most cherished thing is the tableware, but now is a special situation. Had to use this knife. Sanji took out a white napkin from inside his black suit and used it to wipe the small knife clean. Under the sunlight, Sanji repeatedly observed that the small table knife was clean and reflective. He quickly put away the small knife. Sanji used a napkin to wipe off the blood on his suit as cleanly as possible. "Okay, it's time for the gentleman to really show his strength," Sanji said. Sanji lit a new cigarette, straightened his tie and moved his ankles, in order to really show his strength. "Now it's time to really show your strength." How could Sanji, a handsome chef, be humiliated by a fat pig? Sanji quickly walked in front of Mr. Four and Rasu. Mr. Four saw Sanji coming back. He swung the metal bat in his hand. "It seems you haven't had enough shells yet," Mr. Four said. Sanji looked at him disdainfully and said, "If you haven't taught a gentleman to get angry, don't be complacent." Mr. Four threw another cannonball and said, "I'll tell you to be tough." He threw the cannonball up, and then swung the metal bat to hit it. The cannonball was sent flying with a bang. But Sanji didn't stay where he was, but quickly ran towards the direction the shells came from. He jumped up, and his feet were already on top of the cannonball. "Back to you." Sanji kicked the cannonball hard and flew towards Mr. Four. "What?" Mr. Four said in shock. He swung the metal bat violently in an attempt to parry, but it was too late. The shell hit him in the body. Boom! There was an explosion, and Mr. Four was covered by the shell explosion. This shell was also a fragmentation shell, with hundreds of nails driven into the body of Mr. Four. "What?" Mr. Four shouted like a killing pig. Sanji looked at the fat opponent with cold eyes. Now he is also feeling disgusted in his heart, but of course it hasn't completely finished. Just now, Sanji was using a trick. Since the opponent's shells exploded at a certain time, he took the lead and kicked them back. The shell instead blew up the Mr. Four. Mr. Four is in great pain now and keeps crying. Finally, Mr. Four finally stopped. His body was fat and tall and he could still withstand the damage. Mr. Four's face twitched and he looked at Sanji ferociously. "Asshole, I'm going to kill you!" Mr. Four roared. Sanji didn't say anything and rushed directly to Mr. Four. Mr. Four was a little panicked. "Don't worry, my target is not you." Sanji rushed towards Rasu quickly. Mr. Four looked at Sanji and Rasu in horror and said, "Rasu, run away quickly." Sanji rushed in front of Rasu, and the cannon dog also reacted and wanted to run away quickly. But it was too late, Sanji's foot had already kicked Rasu. Air Force. Sanji kicked Rasu away with astonishing force, and the cannon-barreled dog screamed and flew into the sky. "Rasu!" Mr. Four roared with tears in his eyes. He watched Rasu fly into the sky and then fall to the ground in the distance. Seeing his pet dog being attacked like this, Mr. Four fell to his knees on the ground in despair. Sanji looked at Mr. Four who was kneeling down. This burly and fat boy was now immersed in pain. Sanji said to Mr. Four naturally, "Don't be like this, isn't it just a dog?" Mr. Four raised his head and looked at Sanji with eyes full of anger, surprise, and hatred. "Hey, dog." Mr. Four was so angry that he was trembling when he spoke. Lesu is Mr. Four's beloved dog, and Mr. Four regards Lesu as wealth above all else. Money, status, and power are all things that make Mr. Four not take a look at them. But only Lesu is enough to make Mr. Four feel loved and regarded as something more precious than life. The burly, fat boy stood up quickly. His right arm held the metal bat tightly. "I'm going to beat you to a pulp." Mr. Four roared angrily. His right arm pressed the organ on the handle of the metal bat, and the metal bat quickly grew many sharp spikes. Transformed into a metal mace. Sanji looked at the powerful metal mace in Mr. Four's hand and said, "Oh, your weapon also has a mechanism. To die." Mr. Four roared angrily and rushed over with his whole body. The metal mace clenched in his right arm came down towards Sanji's head. Sanji jumped away quickly, and Mr. Four's metal mace hit the ground hard. 3 points cut. Sanji kicked out quickly with his legs, kicking his opponent in the throat, chest, and stomach. "Asshole!" Mr. Four angrily swung the metal mace horizontally towards Sanji. Sanji quickly jumped away. Mr. Four violently swung the metal mace to attack Sanji. Sanji's constant movement, jumping and dodging. Mr. Four attacks Sanji crazily all the way. Sanji kept jumping and running to dodge. However, Mr. Four cannot really attack the flexible Sanji with its brute force attack. First meet. Sanji's foot quickly kicked Mr. Four in the chin. There was a harsh cracking sound, and several of Mr. Four's teeth shattered. Mr. Four became even more angry, clenching the metal mace with both arms and attacking crazily. Sanji jumps and runs quickly, his body jerking into mid-air. Superlative ground meat. Sanji kicked Mr. Four's head and upper body intensively with both feet. After Mr. Four was attacked intensively, his nose was bruised and his face was swollen, and his fat and burly body suddenly fell to the ground.